For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Tabi Madiba. Political analyst Aubrey Machiki joins me to discuss his column, Ramaphoria Index Falling. Why do you say the Ramaphoria Index is falling?
Well, if you remember, the view most people, I believe, took prior to the Nazareth conference was that it was an imperative for Ramaphosa to defeat Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, because Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma came from the Zuma camp, or at least that was the perception. And because of that real or perceived battle between the Zuma camp and the Ramaphosa camp, the imperative was to ensure that post the Nazareth conference, South Africa and the ruling party deviate from the course that it has been on, or it had been on under Jacob Zuma. So Ramaphosa basically was seen as a candidate in contradistinction, not only to Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, but to Jacob Zuma and what Jacob Zuma stood for. And of course, if you look at what the markets did when Ramaphosa was elected president of the ANC, the rand strengthened considerably to levels we had last seen just before Nhlanhla had been fired as finance minister in December 2015. Levels of confidence in business amongst investors rose. There was a lot of talk of hope, renewal, and of course the new dawn. And South Africa had a spring in its step after Ramaphosa was elected, because levels of euphoria were quite high, hence I suppose the term Ramaphoria. Now, the problem with euphoria sometimes is that an individual may be credited for things that he is not responsible for. An individual may be credited for a coincidence between his rise as a leader and changes in the political environment, which to some extent is what happened to Ramaphosa. So you have rising levels of business confidence, market confidence, investor confidence. You have ratings agencies that are not as bearish as they were before the Nazareth conference. The rand is strengthening, and that feeds the euphoria because it suggests that there is a tangible reason why we should be hopeful, especially with regard to turning around the South African economy. But things have taken a turn, not for the better. You look at the labor relations space, it is becoming increasingly unstable. In fact, service delivery protests must be part of the weather report. Well, in fact, they've become part of traffic reports now. That's how frequent they've become. You look at the rand. The rand, at some point, a few weeks ago, reached levels the media referred to as Zuma levels. The new dawn is under attack, even amongst commentators who are looking at Ramaphosa and his performance, who say, yes, in the state, at the level of governance, things are changing. But he appears to be indecisive. The ANC is as divided as ever. It is not obvious that Ramaphosa is in charge of the ruling party. What is becoming even less obvious now is whether he is in charge of the country and whether he is his own man. And as a result, the Ramaphoria Index, in my view, is falling.
Why do you feel Ramaphosa should have waited until 2019 to take up the position as head of state?
The day Ramaphosa was elected ANC president, which was the 18th of December, if my memory serves me well, I was on Power FM that evening. And I argued that evening that the likelihood is that this is going to be the weakest president the ANC has ever had. And I still maintain that's the case. as a citizen, I want to be proved wrong, because South Africans deserve better than what South Africans went through under the reign of Jacob Zuma. The reason I argued in that manner is because I felt that, knowing some of his limitations, it would be a mistake for him to accept the position of interim president before the 2019 general election, because his limitations would come to the fore too soon. And I think to some extent, his limitations are coming to the fore. And therefore, while I still maintain that the ANC is not going to lose the 2019 election, I think to some extent he is going to be a liability. So the ANC will win the 2019 elections, not because of him, but despite him.
Ramaphosa has secured an investment commitment from both Saudi Arabia and United Emirates, which in the past investment promises were not achieved. Is it too early to assess Ramaphosa's new dawn?
Well, in Zulu they say, no say shayila kakayidli, which means even if you have hit the bird, you have not eaten it yet. These are pledges. This is not FDI. In fact, if you go back to Mandela's tour around the world after his release, there were lots of pledges, most of which did not materialize. So there's no guarantee that these will materialize. But more importantly, look, what investors are looking for are structural reforms. And I think many an investor is going to hold back until these structural reforms become material. They're not just going to go on talk of a new dawn or talk of renewal and hope. They'll want to see something tangible as far as the structural reforms are concerned.
You have stated that the election of Ramaphosa as head of state was the second coming of Madiba for many inside and outside the ANC. So does this mean people saw Madiba's qualities in Ramaphosa?
Well, Madiba's wish was that Ramaphosa would succeed him at the end of his term in 1999. Madiba did not get his wish. I may sound contradictory, but I think if Ramaphosa had succeeded Madiba, he would have been a good president, because he would have been a president during the honeymoon period. I don't think he's the right man for this period, because this is not a honeymoon period. We're going through some of the most difficult periods post-apartheid. That is why I was perturbed after his election when I saw the euphoria and realized that we are going through a second Mandela moment, the second coming of Mandela in a way. And in a way, that's not fair to Ramaphosa. For instance, in his first 100 days, people had expectations of him delivering on things that should be delivered in a century. That's how high the levels of euphoria are. So in a sense, we can talk about his weakness, but also we can talk about the unfairness of the weight of expectations he has to bear on his shoulders.
Why do you think could have been the case for Ramaphosa not to succeed Madiba as he had wished?
Well, if my memory serves me well, Madiba went public and indicated that he wanted Ramaphosa to succeed him. And if my memory serves me well, inside the party, there were voices that said that was not his decision to make. It was the decision of the structures of the ANC to make. Now, at the time, Ramaphosa was very popular around the country, across the board. But what he forgot is that popularity outside the ANC must be matched by popularity inside the ANC. So there was a mismatch between his popularity outside the ANC and his popularity inside the ANC. And that is why Thabo Mbeki was elected president of the country in 1999 and not Ramaphosa.
Why do you feel South Africans will celebrate more older Mandela than the young Mandela who became a commander in the armed struggle against white minority rule?
There are many Mandelas. There's Mandela, the commander-in-chief of Umkhonto weSizwe, the radical and militant Mandela. There's Mandela, the reconciler. There's Mandela, the commodity, to the extent that some just turned him into a commodity from which they wanted to profit financially. There is Mandela, the buffer zone between white fears and black aspirations. There are many Mandelas that we have constructed. Of course, there is Mandela the saint. It is Mandela the saint and Mandela the reconciler that people have embraced more than the other Mandelas. And there's a very good reason for that. You can go about reconciliation in two ways. In the way Thabo Mbeki spoke about it, when he said there will be no reconciliation in South Africa unless the material conditions of those who are oppressed change. Or you can approach reconciliation as something that happens when black and white people sit next to each other at a stadium watching Bafana Bafana or the Springboks or the Proteas. Something ephemeral. And I think when people foreground Mandela the reconciler, it's because they're not serious about changing the material conditions of those who are oppressed. So there wants this touchy-feely, soft version of reconciliation, which is not attached to the commitment to, in real terms, change the lives of those who are oppressed.
And lastly, can you tell us what this centenary means to you as an individual? I have mixed feelings.
Mandela was a colossus, there's no doubt about it. But I think when you talk about historical figures, political figures such as Mandela, Barack Obama, Winston Churchill, and I'm counting male leaders deliberately, it is because to some extent we believe that our salvation lies in the hands of powerful men. So you see now why I'm not mentioning women. I think that belief still persists, that our salvation lies in the hands of a powerful man. Mandela is gone, another powerful man must rise as a savior, as a messiah, to save us. And to some extent, that mantle has been put on Ramaphosa's head. I think we must look at Mandela holistically. Look at all the Mandelas. Why was he militant? Why did he become commander of Umkhonto weSizwe? What explains his relationship with those who imprisoned him? Why was he forgiving after 27 years in prison? Why was he prepared to be in the same government with his oppressor, F.W. de Klerk? Why did he foreground reconciliation so much? And what is it that we can learn about all of that? So for me, to the extent that there is a Mandela in all of us, there must be two Mandelas we foreground in all of us. The Mandela who is militantly committed to change, and the Mandela who understands that it's not only militancy on its own that brings about change, but reaching out sometimes even to your enemies can bring about change. But central to that must be the idea of commitment to change.